Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Bodhi Ryder, and we're hanging with your boy Galaxy on Comic-Con Radio.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Galaxy signing in for Comic-Con Radio. Coverage of pop culture events from around the globe. Amazing interviews with celebrities. Daily recaps and reviews of popular television. Movie reviews. Everything Comic-Con and fandom from around the globe. Comic-Con Radio. Get ready to enter our universe. Let's go.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is your boy Galaxy for another amazing episode after Comic-Con week. So post-Comic-Con week episode. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I know I've been saying that in every episode this week. We recorded like 25 new episodes, bunch of live interviews. Today we have a really cool guest. I met this gentleman at Comic-Con in San Diego, a really cool guy, and he's a writer of a really cool series. It's called the Curseborn Saga. Today we have Bodhi Ryder in the studio. Bodhi, what's up, brother? Welcome to Comic-Con Radio.
Hey, what's up, Galaxy? Thank you so much for having me on. I'm stoked to be here.
I am happy you're on, man. You're a cool guy, and you're a young dude, and you're writing so many cool books. How's your life?
Dude, I have no complaints at all, man. I mean, I get to travel around the world. I get to write. I mean, I've loved stories since I was a kid, and to be able to, write stories and then share them with people, it's a dream come true.
So you're a native San Diegoan. How do you call it? San Diegan? How do you want to say that?
San Diegan. I was actually born on the East Coast, but I grew up in San Diego since I was about 10. So yeah, I spent most of my childhood here. That's
pretty rad, man. And these stories of yours, manga and all that, where did that come from?
Well, actually, man, when I was 20, I packed a backpack and moved to Japan and lived there for 2 years. I ended up going to college there. I was an English teacher. I was always super inspired by Japanese storytelling. I think that the Japanese writers are among the best in the world right now, especially in this day and age. So I was really kind of inspired to write through those stories. And, that was my first dream, was to go to Japan. So that's kind of where everything really began.
So you lived that life. You're that guy that actually packed his bags, went across the ocean to uncharted territory. You went to school there. You became a teacher there. That's a pretty rad story. Just your life alone is a rad story. Forget your books for a second. What inspires you to go across the oceans and just learn everything?
Well, I mean, my dream in life is to live a great story. And I write adventure stories, and I feel there has to be kind of a sense of realism to those stories. And, your imagination is great, but I think there's kind of a limit to it. And so for example, I wrote this one scene in the books I write where the heroes climb this great tree. It's like a 1,000-foot tree. And they think it would be fun to jump off one of the higher branches. Of course, none of the characters in my story are human, so this is possible. And they jump off into this lake and they free fall for a while, because they're really high up. And so I wanted to know what that felt like. So I actually went skydiving so that I could bring that sense of realism to that little scene, which only ended up being a page and a half long. And so, yeah, I feel when I travel, I'm trying to, understand how the world works and live that so that in the books it comes off, is true.
That's pretty cool. So where are you from originally? Because wanting to go to Japan is really rad.
So my mom is born in Egypt, and she moved here when she was about 20 with my grandma and her sister and my grandfather. And she started going to college while learning English. And my grandma actually started going to college at the same time. Both of them did a PhD while learning English. And also my dad is from Canada, so actually none of my parents are American, although I was born here. I mean, Japan, I think I was just inspired by their stories, and that's why I ended up going there.
You seem like a very interesting person. I met you at San Diego Comic-Con, and we chatted it up for a little bit. You have this good soul. You give this energy off that's pretty cool. Now, your stories are crazy. They're mythical and wonderful and imaginative, and God only knows what's going on in your mind when you make these stories. Yeah. But you seem like a really chill, calm person. It's so different from your stories. How do you manage to do that?
I feel the stories in my life are so closely interwoven that even though I'm writing in a high fantasy environment, Like there's so much little pieces of it that kind of come into it. Plus, like, I'm the writer of the Curseborn Saga, but there's actually 4 creators of the story. It's like me, my brother, and my 2 best friends, and we're known as the Four Lords, and we've been working on this for 9 years now. And it's like I met my 2 friends working at a video game store out of high school, and we just started creating this universe. So it's like, it's not just me that's bringing stuff to the table in the stories. There's like full team effort, you know?
And that really shows that you guys are known as the Four Lords. So how did you get that name?
When we grew up, we loved other stories, and there was like the story that we all grew up watching. In it, there's these 4 characters called the 4 Emperors, and kind of like adapted the name based off of that, just, you know, because we thought it was super cool. And yeah, that's where that came from.
So it's yourself, it's Squall, it's Simon, and your brother Elnath, and you guys created this Curseborn Saga where now you guys are like doing all these crazy things. Do you sometimes wish you were some of your characters?
Not really. I mean, like, I feel like I get to live such a great life already. Like, I actually just spent 2 months in Nepal living with the monks. Wow. I did a 50-mile trek.
Wait. Let's talk about that. So you went to Nepal for 2 months and you live amongst monks.
Yeah, I did. It's actually the second time I've gone to Nepal and lived in the monastery with the monks.
They just let you live there?
Well, you have to ask them for permission first. But, like, yeah, they open up the monastery twice a year. It's Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu. It's like I basically pulled a Doctor Strange. And yeah, I flew into Kathmandu with a backpack. I hiked out into the hills. I found the monastery. I lived with the monks. You know, I was going through a lot at the time, and I felt like I needed to get somewhere far away from home by myself and be kind of isolated. And to this day, I don't really know why I chose Nepal. It could be that, like, that's where Doctor Strange went, and I just thought that would be awesome. Like, I think it was always, like, a little dream of mine to learn under the monks, just because I feel like they have so much to teach. Yeah, man, it turned out to be like one of the most influential things I've ever done in my life, you know?
So it was actually what you expected and more.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways expected and unexpected, you know? So like the way the monks were, the teachings, like how it was living there, and there's like 500 baby monks, and to me they're like little Buddhas, you know? They're so pure. They run around, they all have their same dark red colored clothing on, and I've played tag with them in the gardens. Like, it's just, you know, I feel so lucky. Like, I don't think I could ever wish to be another character, just because I feel so, like, grateful for how my life has turned out already.
Do you think all this backpacking and adventures that you do are very important to keep up with your writing and for you guys to keep creating these amazing stories?
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. Like 4 years ago, I backpacked Europe. I rode a bicycle across Spain. Like, I literally rode a bicycle from Barcelona through Zaragoza, which is the biggest desert in Spain, up into Pamplona, ran with the bulls, and then the next day set out on my bicycle, rode over the Pyrenees Mountains to San Sebastian, sold the bicycle, hitchhiked up into France, surfed Biarritz, surfed Hossegor. And I feel like then when I go in and I'm writing the characters, like, I know what it feels like to be alone in the world. I know what it feels like to have everything go wrong. I know, you know, all these things, and it brings, even though I'm writing in a fantasy environment, I mean, Stephen King said it best, fiction is the truth within the lie. And I feel like although it is fiction, you know, there's so much truth in those worlds that are fantasy, and it comes in the characters, the emotions. They're all feeling things that we have all felt before, you know? And so to be able to really understand those things helps when I'm writing the story a lot, I believe.
So do you think that you having the luxury of doing these books and that's just your whole focus, you get to do all these adventures and learn more, and then hence all that learning goes back into writing more amazing books, and it just gives this big circle of this yin and yang in your life where you're writing, you're experiencing, writing, experiencing. You think that's the reason?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly, man. And that's how I've been living my life for, you know, the last decade. And my writing has improved dramatically. Like, I just feel so lucky, man, honestly.
And you have your 3 friends, or your 2 friends and your brother alongside you, and you guys always just come off with ideas and pick each other up and just make sure it happens in the way you guys want it to happen.
Yeah, to me, when it comes to like writing a book, like the books we write are like high fantasy. They're pretty thick, you know, and they get adapted into a manga series, which is like a Japanese graphic novel. It takes a lot of time. So I'd say it's like 45% creation, 10% writing, and then like 45% editing. As a group, we're like a really big part of the process, you know, like the writing is really just like the best part, the easiest part, and the shortest part of the whole process.
Yeah, editing is a very major part. I understand that my book is coming out, and it's nowhere near as thick as the books you guys write. Took me, 3 years now, because I keep going back to it, and there's always room for perfection and growth and change. And that's the problem with being a writer, and I know you have that issue. But I don't know if you have this issue. No, I don't want to step on it, but my issue is I'm always finding room to fix, to make it better. But when is enough enough? Do you ever have that problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, they say art isn't finished, it's abandoned. And I think that's because every day you grow as an artist. And so every day you look at it with a different perspective. And so it can always be changed and enhanced. But I think that there is that point in time where you got to realize that, like, it can be infinitely changed. But really, for you to change and grow as a writer, you have to move on to new projects. So just get it to where you're like as happy as you can be with it, and then start a new project, because, you know, it's fun to have a blank piece of paper as opposed to an editing job. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. Editing is a bummer, but you got to do it right, because then people are going to be like, hey, you didn't check your own work.
Yeah, seriously.
So you guys write these really fat, big manga books. Can you explain what manga is? I know our fans know what it is, but some fans probably don't know. What is that?
Manga is the coin term for a Japanese graphic novel. So it would be like the Japanese equivalent of a comic book. You read it right to left. For example, like I'm sure everyone's heard of anime, right? All anime comes from manga, which are graphic novels. And if they do well in Japan, then it typically gets turned into an anime series, an animated series. So yeah, our books are drawn and illustrated by a mangaka named Sean Lam out of Singapore, who was previously published with Kodansha. And right now we have a producer in Japan. And hopefully, you know, if everything goes well, we'll get picked up for an anime series as well. But yeah, everything is,
Congratulations, man. That's pretty cool. This person takes your book, goes through it, and then draws art from it. And if that hits, then an anime company will come and take it and then create an animated series, basically.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool, man.
Exactly. It's a very niche kind of category. Like, I think that there's really not that many people in the United States that are doing it. You know, like we've been doing book signings at Anime Expo for the last 5 years, Comic-Con for the last 4 years. We've done Salt Lake City Comic-Con. We've done Kamikaze in LA, Stanley's Comic-Con. And so it's kind of cool because, like, years ago, we were really, like, kind of I would say, in the very beginning stages of people starting to come out with this, like, manga stuff. And so I feel like we're kind of a little bit ahead of the game. And I feel like it's only a matter of time until, like, they start. I mean, the graphics in CGI films right now are getting so good to the point where they really could actually do live action renditions of anime, they have amazing stories as well, you know? So I think it's coming, man.
Wow, that'll be pretty rad to see some of these stuff. Some fans reach out and say, hey, what's manga? Is it like those kung fu movies now where they, like, jump in the sky? And you came at a right time.
Thanks, man. It's cool, and I hope that we can do the Japanese storytelling honor because we're so inspired by them. But I think that we do as best we can, and we'll just have to wait and see how it turns out.
Do you get a lot of support and love from that community?
I mean, the Japanese people are like a very, very humble and respectful people. It's one of the reasons I love Japan so much. I mean, like, there's like, you go to Tokyo, there's like really no trash anywhere. No one throws trash on the street. Everyone's very polite, very humble.
It's not like the K-pop world, because, you know, K-pop, I know it's different. It's Korea. They're so harsh. Yeah. And there's a band from America that's trying to get into K-pop at the moment. And they're like, get back, get out of here. So it's not like that. Okay, that's cool, man.
Well, it is hard as an American to get manga published in Japan, because if you are, like, the one thing about the Japanese people is that they're very, like, true to their own culture. And, like, so I would say that, like, yeah, we would be among the first to kind of make it in the manga world in Japan. But I think it's an inevitability. Like, we all have so much passion, so much faith, and we put so much hard work into it and like having lived in Japan and to understand the culture and the people really helps a lot, actually.
Yeah, man, because which one of those writers went to Nepal and lived with the monks for 2 months? And I don't think they've skydived to feel how a god jumps from a tree. So
yeah, right.
You got your ticket in. They're like, hey, this guy jumps from planes. He lives with the monks, travels across with a backpack, sold his bike when he was in Spain just to, do this or that. You got some amazing fun stories, man. You're like it's like a movie. You should write about yourself. Have you had the idea of doing that?
I have a lot of people ask about that. For me, it's like I love writing, but I like stuff with like dragons and, that powers and abilities. So I hardly ever write about myself. But what I do is I think that like the origin form of like storytelling comes from oral storytelling. So I actually love telling stories as well. And so normally, like when I sit down with friends or people that I meet, like I'll tell them stories of my adventures in person.
Maybe we can catch you one day around a bonfire and you could share some of those stories.
Oh man, I would love to. I actually, I just wrote a new novel actually called The Monastery. And, it's like kind of a fictitious development of like my travels in Japan. I mean, it takes place a long time ago and it's a completely fictional world, but yeah, I'm really stoked on how that came out, actually.
It is coming from a truth. It is coming from your feelings. You've experienced something similar because, of course, we don't have dragons or, we can't jump 1,000 feet in one bounce, but...
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah, like, for example, like I wrote The Monastery and like I'm dedicating the book to Tibet. And also I'm going to be donating 50% of the proceeds to charities for children in Nepal. And I'm not sure how much you know about the situation between like Tibet and China. But I'm trying through the story that I told, I'm trying to like raise some light on that and bring some love to the Tibetan people. I feel like as a writer, it's kind of our obligation I feel like writers are kind of like teachers, and they just use a different medium of teaching than, other people, and we teach through stories, and through those stories people can kind of interpret the lessons or the messages on their own in a way that each person may interpret it differently, but I think ultimately in the end it's all absorbed.
It's really nice of you to do that, to get 50% of the proceeds, because I know how much it can cost for books to go through and how much work goes into it, but for you to do that, that's amazing. And that's a big thank you back to the monks that took you in for a second time and allowed you to stay at their monastery and all that. So when you walked into the monastery for the first time, was it surreal? Like, what did you see? What did you experience?
So the first time I went into the monastery, it was a little bit different than what I was expecting, in the sense that like all of the monks, like they kind of just ignore you. And I thought it would be really different. Like they'd be very opening and welcoming and stuff like that. And like the dogs will like come, like I tried to go up to like one of the dogs and they just like kind of like are hesitant. They grapple a little bit. And for a while I was like, this is so weird. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then as I was living there, like 1 week, 2 weeks, I started to realize that like, in our Western world, everything that's going on here moves a million times a minute. And when we go there, it's kind of like we're wearing this cloak of chaotic energy. And like the monks and the animals there, they can sense that. And they move on like a much slower scale. Like when they sit down and they eat, like they just eat. Does that make sense? Like they go, they're consumed in eating. And, it took a while and I was like so stoked finally when like I kind of slowed down to that level. I relaxed, the whole time I was there, I had my phone completely turned off, and like, then the dogs will start to come around, the little baby monks will come over and they'll start to talk to you. But yeah, it was like, I really realized that there's a difference and there's like an energy difference in the people. And so by going there, I feel like I was able to kind of like cleanse myself of everything. And, the whole time I was over in Nepal, I think I took 3 hot showers in 2 months. And it's like, you really become like grateful for the things that we inevitably start to take for granted over here, and that's why I really appreciate that country and the people there.
And they're living that life. I don't know if they miss it because they grow up or they get accustomed to that all their life, but for you, coming from somewhere where you could just go get a hot shower at any time and it's just like, hey, let me run in the shower before I go eat a sandwich, but for you to slow down and then for them to sense that, that's pretty amazing. Do you feel that they were on a different spiritual plane than we are here?
Yeah, for sure. I think that they are just like so zoned in and slowed down in a completely different environment than we are, that it seems like they're on a different spiritual plane. But I believe that everyone's on the same spiritual path, no matter like who or where you are. And like your spiritual path is kind of defined by the circumstances of your environment, So like, even though they are very calmed down, like they are still going through the same struggles that we are going through, just in different ways. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody has problems, but in different ways,
Exactly.
all over the world, all over everywhere we go.
But yeah, I definitely believe that there is really so much to learn from the people over there, the monks. I mean, like, seemingly the Nepali people don't have a lot. A lot of people would look at them and say, well, they don't have, they don't have a lot of money. It's a third world country. But, while I was there, like I made good friends with this guy named Suzant, and he works at a mala shop. His monthly salary is about $80 for working 50 hours a week. He is like one of the happiest people I've ever met in my life. And, I really owe so much to Suzant. I actually named the main character in the monastery novel that I wrote, Suzant, for him. He showed me that the Nepali people, like, they don't need a lot. They don't complain. They have pride in their work and love for their family. And that's all they need. And I feel like everyone can learn so much from them. So I wanted to really do something. I wanted to give something back. And like, I've done all these adventures. I've done these things. I've written these books. I wrote the Curseborn Saga. And, there's still 2 more books left in it, but I'm working on the third. And, but this time I wanted to like really try and give something back with something that I wrote. And so I'm super excited to have been able to do that.
So the Curseborn Saga, you said you have 3 more books left in that series and that's it?
Well, the Curseborn Saga. Okay. So the first book in the Curseborn Saga is called No More Heroes, being the first part of the Curseborn Saga. That one I finished in 2017. It took me about 7 years to write. It's the story of 2 brothers who live on these 2 floating countries in the sky in the lands of Soria. And of one of the countries, everyone born on Folia is born cursed from birth, and they don't know why. And kind of throughout the progression of the story, you figure out like what the meaning of that curse is and what it entails for their people. And the story basically follows Kaim and Storm as they set off out into the world to find and fight the strongest people that exist. And it's a big ensemble cast of characters, a lot of switched point of views, and it kind of is the story about 2 brothers who unite a fallen nation that no longer believes in themselves. Dang. So that's kind of like the underground premise of the Curseborn Saga. The second book, The Soldier Games, just came out. It's on Amazon, ebook, paperback, so people can find it pretty easily. And that one just came out like July 4th. So super excited for that one. And then the third book, Graph and the Thousand Ring Festival, I wrote it about 5 years ago. And so it just has to go through like a pretty heavy edit. But I'm hoping for a 2021 release on that. And then there'll only be one last book in the series. It's a 4-book series.
And then that's it for that. But that is basically the signature series for you and your team. It's the Curseborn Saga.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what's allowing you to live with the monks. And that's such an amazing thing that you want to help. You're this kid from America that wrote a bunch of amazing books, but now your books are changing the world. And like you said, through your words and through your stories, you're affecting, millions eventually. And that's just how it goes. And that must feel so good for you.
It's honestly such a kind of an unbelievable feeling to be able to do that. And like, I'm really excited to see how people react to the monastery, because it's kind of, The other ones I read are books, like solid books, but the monastery is the first novel that I wrote. I don't know, have you ever heard of the book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho?
Of course.
Yeah, so like when I first sat down to write the monastery, I was like, what kind of medium do I want to use to tell this story? Like what kind of book? And so I thought like the Alchemist was always something that was very inspiring to me. But to me, that was like the kind of, among the top in the echelon of writing. It's very simple. It's to the point. It's easy to read. But it is also deeply profound. And so I wanted to try and see if I could write something on that level. Yeah, the monastery came out. It's a tad bit longer than The Alchemist, but it's a similar type of story. So yeah, it should be coming out in September of this year. Do you want to hear like a little bit about it? I haven't talked about it anywhere, actually.
Absolutely, man.
Cool. So story takes place like a long time ago. And it takes place in this country called Nima, which in Tibetan means sunshine. And in the world at that time, there's an empire, and it's been conquering countries all around their corner of the world for centuries. And by the time the story takes place, the empire has conquered all 109 countries in their corner of the world, except for one, which is Nima. And Nima is protected by the mountains, and that's why they've been safe for so long, but it's only a matter of time before the empire comes. So at the beginning of the story, the queen of Nima becomes pregnant, and it's their tradition for the king and the queen to go see this seer or this oracle, this old woman who, gives their child the blessing of their people. And so when they go to see the seer, she sees the queen and she says, "My dear, I've had a premonition." And she says, "I have seen that of the two children you will have, of your twins, the firstborn will grow to become the hero of Nima, but not just Nima. They will free all 108 countries from the empire's grasp." And so the king and the queen rejoice. But she says, "But my dear, there is a cost." And so they look at her and she says, "The only way that this premonition can come true is if when you have your firstborn child, you give them away to someone of common birth to be raised." And so the king and the queen leave, and the queen decides that if it is true that she does have twins, then they will give away the firstborn child to someone of common birth to be raised. And 9 months later, she gives birth to a beautiful baby boy, and then not 2 minutes later, a beautiful baby girl. And they give the firstborn child away to a cobbler in the city of Nima to be raised. And the monastery is the story of Suzant and how he becomes the hero of Nima.
I can picture what you're trying to say, with the big country that's taking over everywhere and the small country that's protected by the mountains. I get it. I absolutely get it. It's a really cool story. And this kid's going to be raised by a cobbler, but because his blood is his blood, but because that cobbler probably taught him different things, and to be honest, to be truthful, to be all that, he becomes this big savior. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, man. He ends up having this dream later on when he's about 16. And in the dream, he's staring up at this mountain, and at the top of this mountain is a peak of lightning, unlike anything he's ever seen, just an unrelenting lightning storm striking the peak of this mountain. The next thing he knows, he's bumping down this little dirt road in the back of a caravan, and he's asking these guys in the caravan, how do I get to the monastery? How do I get to the monastery? And they're telling him, but it's in their own language he can't understand. The next morning, he wakes up, and he sits out of bed, and he goes, "What's a monastery?" And, the story kind of follows him leaving their capital and heading out into the world to follow a dream that he has. He ends up finding this monastery, and, through some twist and turn, he gets inside this monastery and ends up falling asleep in the garden. And when he wakes up the following morning, he steps off to the edge of the garden and realizes that the monastery he's in is somehow floating in the sky, and that everyone that's ever came to this place has never been able to leave. And so that's kind of the second layer of the story, why he's there, what the purpose of his dream is, and how he's going to be able to go back home and ultimately figure out who he is.
And you just thought of all this probably while you were at the monastery.
Yeah, the first time I was there, I had the idea for, actually, I had that dream myself about the mountain with the lightning. Obviously, when I woke up in the morning, I knew what a monastery was. Yeah. But yeah, that was the spark. That was the spark for the story.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I'm so excited to be able to share the story with everyone. It's like, for me, it's like, I feel like I can always pick up the monastery and read it. And if I were to ever forget things that are important that I've learned, I feel like everything in there is things that I learned on my travels that I never want to forget. So I'm happy to share that.
So it's your guide.
Yeah, I was so stoked. Like I finished the story when I went back to Nepal the second time, and I was there with my wife, and Suzanne came with us on the trek in the Himalayas. And, we did like 50 miles in 8 days or something. And at the end of every day, I would sit down and read to him part of the book. And throughout the entire trek through the Himalayas, I was able to read to him the entire story that I wrote after naming the main character after him. And, I just feel like that is such a rare experience, And so to be able to share that with him and just to live that adventure, like the book aside, is, I'm just so stoked on life, man.
And plus, you get to share it with your wife and your family.
Yeah.
And your brother writes with you. It's an amazing thing. Is there anything you want to tell your fans or our fans out there before we start heading out?
I just want to say that if any of you guys like adventure stories, that, when I write, I think that the true writing is things that drives emotion in people. So if you want to read stuff that will make you feel something, give the Curseborn Saga a try, or wait till September, maybe give the monastery a read. Also, want to give a shout out to my brother's band, Sweet Tooth. They just got played on 91X in San Diego. They're going to have a show tonight, actually, in OB at the Holding House. Gabe Valentine from Digital Lizards of Doom is going to be stepping in as the lead guitarist tonight, so super stoked on that. And I'm very happy and grateful to be able to share my stories with everyone.
That's wonderful.
So thank you, Galaxy. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's an honor, my friend.
Oh, of course. Anytime. You're welcome anytime. And I want to bring you back once the book Monastery comes out, because now I get it. I'm becoming a fan. I'm going to go pick up some of these books and start reading them.
Perfect, man. I'd love to. That'd be awesome.
Then I'll be on the same playing field.
Man, yeah, I think awesome just chatting with you, man. I would love to sit down and chat with you anytime, dude.
Of course, absolutely. You're always welcome, and you're a really good dude. And your books, No More Heroes, Soldier Games, Curseborn Saga, Tales of Kasura. Did I say it right?
Oh, yeah, the Tales of Seisura. That was one thing I was working on with another author named Brandon Chen.
Nice.
It's a work in progress right now, but that one's going to be really great when that one's finished.
That's pretty cool, man. And then your book coming out, The Monastery, which I can't wait. Because if it's like The Alchemist, it's going to be an amazing book. And it's based on feelings of when you stayed at a monastery. And that's so cool. It was a pleasure having you on the show. I can't wait to have you back on. And with that said, Bodhi, brother, we're going to sign out from another amazing episode of Comic-Con Radio. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I was a little calmer today because Bodhi calmed me down. I felt that energy. We're signing out from another amazing episode. And with that said, Bodhi, we got to give kisses to all the fans. Ready? 3, 2, 1, mwah.
Thank you, guys.
There we go. Peace out, guys. Love ya. And tune in for next time. Peace.
Bye.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Galaxy signing out from another amazing episode of Comic-Con Radio. Tune in for your daily shows of Comic-Con Radio. Go to comiccon-radio.com. Reach us on social media. Instagram at Comic-Con Radio. Comic-Con Radio, taking the world one listener at a time.